The Buffalo Bills made some interesting roster moves. Plus, we got to get into some herd mentality items today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, folks, welcome in. We've got a couple of new players added to the Bills roster, a couple of significant injuries to discuss, and then a couple of segments of herd mentality, some fun questions to get to today. So let's dive into all of it and start with some of the roster shakeup. And the big news coming out of One Bills Drive on Monday is that Shane Buechele, the Bills' third quarterback, suffered a neck injury during the preseason loss to the Bears. Sean McDermott shared that he is going to miss an extended period of time with this neck injury. So obviously we wish him well in his recovery, and you never like hearing about injuries, especially to the head or neck area. And so he's going to be out for an extended period of time, which creates a void in the QB3 spot. Now, Shane Buechele, not a big loss. I think you saw what he was on Saturday, and that was very unimpressive. But the QB3 role for a NFL team does matter. And they have a couple of important responsibilities. First and foremost, to run the scout team offense every single week. So the third quarterback for the Bills, week one, is going to have to be Kyler Murray, the Cardinals quarterback, and run that offense. Then he's got to quickly become Tua Tagovailoa in week two to give the Bills defense a good look of what the Dolphins offense is going to be, so on and so forth. So it's a big job that they have to do. The other thing is, the reality is they're one snap away from being the backup quarterback. And so I know we've enjoyed Josh Allen, who's been by far the most durable quarterback in the NFL. It's not close. His streak of consecutive starts is like 50 more than the number two guy. So he's the most durable quarterback in the league. But simultaneously, the last 2 years in the NFL, you have seen record-breaking numbers of starting quarterbacks in each of the last two seasons. More than two per team on average. And so you just need to be protected to make sure that you have somebody that can come in and play. And I know that everyone thinks, well, if the quarterback goes down, then the season's over. Well, not every quarterback injury is season-ending. Sometimes it's only a few weeks. And you need somebody to be able to come in and stabilize the ship for a couple of weeks, give yourself a chance for your quarterback to come back and your season not to be lost. And then the third thing that these quarterback threes do is they're part of supporting the starter. The entire quarterback room works together so that the starter can play at their best. And that's why you see Josh Allen typically surrounded by people he's familiar with. And there's a lot of jokes out there that Josh Allen wants his friends to be his backup quarterbacks. Well, that's because they're an important piece in the overall preparation and execution during games. This is his support staff. You know, he's got help from his peers in the meeting rooms, on the sideline during games, during practices, being able to communicate and see the game a certain way so that the starter can perform optimally is part of what all the quarterbacks do. So it's not just Joe Brady and Josh Allen. It's Joe Brady and Josh Allen with quarterbacks coach Ronald Curry, with QB2 Mitch Trubisky and QB3. So they all work together, right? It's part of the all of the above approach that your starter can perform at their best. And so now Shane Buechele was this guy last year and doesn't sound like he's going to be around. We'll see what ultimately happens if the Bills put him on injured reserve, or if there's some type of injury settlement, we'll find out. But the Bills did add a new quarterback to their roster, and that is Ben DiNucci. And so let's talk about Ben DiNucci, who is 27 years old, 6'2", 210 pounds, was a 2020 7th-round pick by the Dallas Cowboys out of James Madison. And in 2020, his rookie season, he appeared in 3 total games and started 1 for the Dallas Cowboys. Across his time on the field, he was 23 of 43 for 219 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, did have 2 lost fumbles. And so he actually had to start a game in place of Andy Dalton, who was the Cowboys starter that season. They had a lot of injuries at quarterback. And so he starts this game against the Eagles. I think it was Monday Night Football. They lost 23-9. And after that game, he was replaced by Garrett Gilbert as the primary backup for Dallas. And so he's QB2 for most of the season, then QB3 in Dallas for 2020. Then he spends 2021 on the Dallas Cowboys practice squad. 2022, he's in the XFL with the Seattle Sea Dragons. And he had a good year. He was the starter for the Sea Dragons. The team went 7-3, went to the playoffs. He led the league in passing yards, passing attempts, completions, and interceptions with 13. And he was second in the XFL in passing touchdowns. So I guess a pretty good year for him with the Seattle Sea Dragons. And then in 2023, he was on the Denver Broncos practice squad, and he was on the Denver Broncos up until May 8th, 2024, when they released him. Now he's on the Buffalo Bills. He's had 2 really strong preseasons the last 2 years. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, over a 105 passer rating in the 2022 and 2023 preseasons. And so Ben DiNucci, the driver's seat now to be the QB3, which is practice squad position. And we'll talk in the next segment about the new quarterback 3 rule, and you'll perhaps even learn more about why this third quarterback role provides more value than ever in the NFL. So we'll talk about that on the other side of it. But the Bills did add another player, and I think it corresponds a little bit to another injury. Brian Thompson, one of the Bills' depth receivers, is injured. He's week to week with a hamstring injury, Sean McDermott announced on Monday. And then later in the day on Monday, you get reports that the Bills are signing a wide receiver, and that is Damiere Byrd. And Damiere Byrd he's been in the league for a while. This isn't a random player. He's been on an NFL roster pretty much every single season since 2015. So Damiere Byrd is 31 years old, 2015 undrafted free agent out of South Carolina, and he's been on a roster every year since. Spent his first 4 seasons with Carolina, and of course 2 of those seasons in Carolina overlap with the time that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott were there. So his first 2 seasons in the NFL were in Carolina when McDermott and Beane were there. So 4 seasons in Carolina, then he spent a year with the Cardinals, Patriots, Bears, and Falcons. So he's bounced around a ton, but still getting opportunities as a guy who wasn't drafted and hasn't really stuck around. It's good on him to be 31 years old and has been in the NFL on a team every year since 2015. For his career, he's got 130 catches for 1,689 yards and 7 touchdowns. His best season came as a member of the Patriots. He had over 600 receiving yards that year. He's 5'9", 175 pounds, so he doesn't have a lot of size, but he is very athletic. Ran a 4.27 40-yard dash coming out of college back in 2015. And his RAS score then was a 9.18 out of 10. So he's a very dynamic athlete. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, he profiles potentially as a return guy. Well, he hasn't really had those opportunities in the NFL for his career. And again, every season since 2015, he's been on a roster. 29 career returns, 15 punt returns, 14 kick returns. That's it. Not a lot of opportunity. 29 chances in regular season games to be a returner. And most of that happened earlier in his career. And over the last 3-4 years, he hasn't had a single chance to do it. He does have 10 fair catches. And so for his career during the regular season, he's fielded 25 punts. So 15 returns and 10 fair catches. And he has 2 muffs. All right. So that's not very good. So 2 muffs and 25 chances to field a punt in a game. And then in the preseason, he has 32 fielded punts and 3 muffs. So there's just too many muffs going on there for my liking. And that's probably a big reason why, despite having a lot of speed and profiling as a return guy, he hasn't had those opportunities. So you might think to yourself, maybe this isn't a good sign for KJ Hamler. My mind goes there as well. KJ Hamler is your small speed guy and preseason week 1, he muffs a kickoff return and he drops a pass down the field. So the two things he's supposed to be able to help you do, return and provide speed down the field, he drops a pass and muffs a kick return. So not a great situation there on top of the injury history that exists with KJ Hamler. So maybe a little bit of Brian Thompson replacement, maybe a little bit of pressure for for KJ Hamler, but nonetheless, Damiere Byrd at this point in the process, an interesting addition to this roster. Now, we don't have, as of the recording of this podcast, I don't have the corresponding moves to share with you. I would assume it's something with Ben DiNucci and potentially something with Brian Thompson, but we will see. All right, folks, got some great herd mentality items that I want to get into with you, including some information on the new QB3, some big ideas that people have. We'll dive into all of it here, so be sure to stick with me. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, folks, so let's dive into these herd mentality items. But before we do, I want to tell you about an event that I'm going to be part of that I am fired up about. It is on Saturday, September 7th. So the day before the Bills host the Arizona Cardinals to open up the season, I'm going to be part of a new tradition at Buffalo Riverworks. And I am super excited about this. This event's going to be awesome. It's called the Rally on the River. Again, the day before kickoff festival at Buffalo Riverworks. And I'm going to be doing a live podcast there at 3:00 Eastern time on Saturday, September 7th. Come on down. I can't wait to do the live show. It's going to be fun in front of everyone. Very exclusive. It's not going to be something that you can catch live or anything like that. Like, you got to be there. So it's going to be a cool event. We'll have giveaways. We'll have some guests. And the event is just, the property is incredible. I'm not sure if you've been to Riverworks. I got a chance to tour the facility a couple weeks ago, and it is awesome. They've got amusement rides. They got zip line. They got multiple bars. They got skating rinks. It's right on the river. There's kayaking. Unbelievable property. And so check it out. There's going to be a ride to Buffalo. So like, you've ride the bull, right? You can ride the Buffalo, local Buffalo vendors, food and drink specials, tailgate games. There's free parking. Admission is free. So be sure to come on down. They're also going to have Chalk Fest that day, which blows my mind. They have these huge grain silos, which is, there's tons of concrete in there. And these chalk artists come in and they draw with chalk on these cement walls. And these pictures are just incredible. And so they're going to have a contest there that day. And the theme is Buffalo, like authentically Western New York. So there's going to be some awesome chalk art to look at. So great family event. Bring them all down. Come say hello. Come be part of the live podcast. Can't wait for it. 3:00 Eastern time, Saturday, September 7th, Buffalo Riverworks. There's a link in today's show notes and everyday show notes. You'll see a link to the Facebook event page so you can learn more about it and sign up to attend. Just say that you're going. So would love for you to be part of that. All right, let's get into some herd mentality items. The first one comes from Rick. Rick says, if the late round picks continue to play this way, what are the chances that any of them could be cut and brought back to the practice squad? I assume Travis Clayton is safe, but the others seem too risky. Feels like a year to play the long game on these draft picks, even if they are slightly worse than a veteran. It's a good question, Rick, and I think roster ability of draft picks has been a fascinating conversation for the Bills over the last few years. And to your point, the Bills made 10 draft picks, and a lot of those are later round picks. So from the 5th round on, Sedrick Van Pran Granger, Edefuan Ulofoshio, Javon Solomon, Tylan Grable, Daequan Hardy, Travis Clayton. And I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty excited about a lot of those players. The only one that I don't think makes the roster is Travis Clayton, who, again, rugby player, and the Bills get an exempt roster spot for him on the practice squad. So he'll be on the practice squad. He won't make the roster, but he's an extra body. I think there's a good chance they all make it, and they should all make it. The guy that I think is questionable is Edefuan Ulofoshio. Not because I don't like him, but he does have some injury stuff, and you could see the Bills giving him the Justin Shorter treatment. Put him on IR, stash him there all season long, and make this a redshirt year. I can see that for sure happening with Edefuan Ulofoshio, especially because they do have some good young depth players in a Balin Spector, in a Dorian Williams, not to mention Bernard and Milano. And you got some veterans in the fray and Deion Jones and Nicholas Moreau. You probably want to hold on to some of these guys. And Edefuan Ulofoshio is kind of your guy that you don't really have much of a feel for. Stash him on the practice squad, stash him on injury reserve for the year. And then, we'll see what happens next year. So I think there's a roster spot for Van Pran Granger. I think Javon Solomon for sure. I think Tylan Grable has shown too much promise already for me to be interested in him not being on this roster. And then Daequan Hardy, the versatility he's showing at corner plus the return upside, I think there's got to be a spot for him too. So I think you could see 9 of the 10 draft picks make this roster. And the only guy that doesn't make it is the international pathway player in Travis Clayton, who's just going to be on the practice squad as an exempt player. Good question. Vin says, and let me finish off on that. I think you're right. I'm not sure you're going to be able to get those guys back. If you expose those players to waivers, I wouldn't mess around with that. I think they not only do I think they should make the Bills roster because of their upside. I don't think you're going to get them back. I think that's too risky. Vin says this is by no means a pressing issue. However, after watching Buechele play, and Vin asked this before the injury was announced, but I still want to get into this. Should the Bills consider signing Bailey Zappi to the practice squad when the Pats cut him? I don't think Zappi is good by any means, but I think he's better than what we saw. Good question here from Vin. And the Patriots are in an interesting situation because they have a deep quarterback room. I'm not sure if any of them are very good, but they have a deep quarterback room. Jacoby Brissett, who's probably going to be their starter. Drake May, the number 3 overall pick in the draft. Bailey Zappi, and then Joe Milton, who they drafted later in the draft, who's got a lot of tools and has had some promise already in the preseason. And so they're not going to be able to roster everybody. So you figure someone's going to be exposed a little bit here. Now, Bailey Zappi's the interesting one. They waived him last year, and they were able to get him back on the practice squad. He cleared waivers. They signed him back to the practice squad. But I think this year's different with the quarterback 3 rule. The NFL changed the QB3 rule. So let me talk about this. Teams are now able to elevate a quarterback from the practice squad and have him eligible to be the emergency quarterback. And this player can be elevated an unlimited number of times. So every single week, if you want, you can elevate a bona fide true quarterback to be the 3rd quarterback that can play in case of an emergency every single week. Now, it's part of your 2 standard weekly elevations that you're able to use. But again, there's an unlimited amount of times that you can elevate this quarterback and put them right back on your practice squad, never exposing them to waivers. And so this is going to make that player on your practice squad even more valuable. Going back to the beginning of this conversation today where we talked about Shane Buechele, Ben DiNucci, and the value of the QB3. And so the only way that the player can actually play in the game is if the first two quarterbacks are injured. And if either of the first 2 quarterbacks are cleared to return, they have to play. The emergency QB3 has to come out. But this is a new rule that's going to, I think, increase the value of the QB3. And so if a guy like Bailey Zappi is available to come be that on your practice squad, not that I think overly highly of Bailey Zappi, but as your practice squad QB3, I mean, probably pretty decent option. So if he wants it, right? I mean, you're not going to put in a waiver claim and sign him to your active roster. You're not going to do that. But if he does clear waivers and he has his choice of practice squads across the NFL, I don't know if he would pick the Bills, but I'd be interested in exploring that because I think Bailey Zappi is probably a better option than Ben DiNucci. It's probably a better option than Shane Buechele. So, yeah, that's an interesting idea, but also a good opportunity to talk about the new QB3 rule, which I think is going to have a bit of an impact here. And I think teams will handle it differently. One thing that's interesting about this new rule is the Bills actually had a different proposal than the rest of the NFL. The Bills proposed that instead of the emergency QB3 being elevated as part of your 2 standard weekly elevations, that it was a 3rd one. So you can have your 2 regular standard weekly elevations, but then this is a third one that you can always do. So I kind of like that. I wish that would have went through. I just don't understand why you would want to punish teams who have injuries and want to be able to use their practice squad to give guys opportunities to play. I mean, I know that there has to be some controls on that, but having 2 standard elevations plus an emergency third quarterback is logical to me, especially because you've seen teams in these spots where they're just trying to get out of a game because their quarterbacks are hurt. Well, let's make these games interesting and have more options available. That's something I'd be in favor of. Obviously, the Bills are as well. So a lot we got into there, the new QB3 rule, and then the idea of Bailey Zappi, who is inevitably going to be, I think he's going to be waived at some point. Is somebody going to sign him to their active roster? We'll find out. But if he has his choice of practice squads, I think he's going to be an attractive option for the Bills and other teams across the league. Jared says if Kaiir Elam takes significant strides in proving himself to be a starting corner, could and should the Bills re-sign Rasul Douglas to be the 2025-2026 safety and pair him with Bishop next season? So, interesting question from Jared. I do think that Kaiir Elam is on a path to be a starter in 2025 opposite of Christian Benford. And he's going to get an opportunity this year. As I keep saying, Dane Jackson was never a preferred starting cornerback for the Bills. Never. But he started 26 games over the last 3 years. It's only a matter of time before Kaiir Elam is going to get his opportunity to play this year. And I think he's done a lot already in training camp and in preseason. I feel great about him as a CB3. Does he show enough that makes you feel like this can be your starter next year? I think there's a good possibility of that. But you have a couple of variables here that I think matter. First of all is Taylor Rapp. Whatever you think of Taylor Rapp, that's great. The Bills love him. They signed him to a 3-year extension after having him on the team for 1 year. And I know there's outs of that contract, but listen to the way Sean McDermott talks about Taylor Rapp and how he's taking control of the safety room and he's a leader. And Bobby Babbitt said a couple weeks ago, there's a lot on his plate this year. So unless Taylor Rapp crashes and burns this year, which is not outside the realm of possibilities, it's my belief that the Bills are committed to this guy. This is their guy at safety right now. So when you talk about pairing somebody with Cole Bishop, you gotta be mindful of Taylor Rapp in that equation. Then the other part of this is, well, can Rasul Douglas play safety? I think he's a logical candidate. Like when you think about late career corners that switch to safety, Rasul Douglas in so many ways makes sense. Ball skills, he's physical, he tackles, he's got some limitations in terms of athleticism, but highly instinctive. Can definitely see a path to him playing safety. Is he ready for that type of transition? Can you count on it? I'm interested. I think it would be appealing. I'd love to have him back. I really like Rasul Douglas, but I certainly want to see this season play out and get a feel for how he's aging and what his appetite is to play safety. So there's a lot of variables in place, but I think maybe the biggest one is don't forget about Taylor Rapp. The Bills love this guy, whether you do or not. And we'll obviously let the season play out and we'll learn a lot about Cole Bishop and Rasul Douglas and Kaiir Elam and Taylor Rapp. All right, got more fun stuff to get into on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, folks, welcome back in. Got a few more to get to. The next one comes from Max. Max says, as someone who sees the training camp highlights for Twitter, I always wonder where the coaches stand. Is Brady in the offensive huddle and Babbage in the defensive huddle? Are they calling plays through a headset like a game? How involved are they? And McDermott in the play-to-play activities. Thank you and love the podcast. Thank you, Max. It's a good question, and I can appreciate this. I'm interested in this type of stuff, and it's something that I take note of when I'm at training camp practices. And of course, I spent 5 practices with the Bills recently, and so I've taken inventory of these things. So let me tell you, during those sessions, you're going to find Joe Brady with a walkie-talkie, standing behind the offense, kind of at an angle behind the offense, calling in plays to Josh Allen through a walkie-talkie. I think that's probably so he doesn't have to have a headset, right? There's not really any communication coming back to him, so he's able to have no headset on, walkie-talkie, and he is engaged in talking through things and sometimes running to the ball when there's a good play and hyping guys up. But during those team periods, he's calling plays he's on the field, but kind of at an angle on a walkie-talkie. Bobby Babich is on the sideline. There's sometimes where he might be behind the defense, but a lot of times he's on the sideline. Same deal with the walkie-talkie calling the defense. Sean McDermott is always right behind the quarterback, right behind Josh Allen or whoever the quarterback is. So if you think of how the offense will line up, you see where the quarterback is, and I would say 5-10 yards behind him is Sean McDermott. And Sean McDermott, this is during the team sessions, this is what he's doing. He's saying, all right, it's 3rd and 6, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 4. He's just calling out the down and distance and just very much letting his coaches coach and being a true CEO out there. That's this year. Now, in the past, last year when he's defensive coordinator, obviously doing a lot of different things. But right now, that's what he's doing. He's behind the play, standing behind Josh Allen, saying, hey, guys, it's 3rd and 6. That's what he's doing. Very much CEO mode. So that's what you can see those guys doing. And for Babich and Brady, those guys, they're firecrackers, man. They bring a lot of juice to the table. So they're fun to watch in practice, and they're very engaged. And just as you've heard, they bring a lot of energy, and I can validate that through my own observations. Greg says, I know Tyler Bass was 7 of 8. But since you saw them live, did they look shaky? Did his field goals look shaky or straight up the middle? Secondly, I missed trick plays from the Dable era. Did you see or get any indication that we have anything cooked up for this season? So when I watched Tyler Bass, he missed 2 field goals. One was from 57 at the blue red, where the ball never had a prayer. Like immediately had no chance. And then the other one was during practice. I think it was from 48 yards. And I think it was kind of like he didn't have as much gas on the ball, but also it felt like it died to the right of the goalpost. But the others went in perfectly fine. That doesn't mean I'm not concerned with Tyler Bass, because I haven't seen every kick, but you get the reports on them, and there's just too many misses. And it's not just misses that are like 50, 57 yards, but he missed yesterday. He missed a couple from like 42 and 43. I'm very concerned about Tyler Bass. I don't remember there being these types of misses in years past. And maybe we just feel some type of way because we know how last season finished, and it's very concerning. I can tell you this, the Bills are committed to Tyler Bass. They are committed to him. Whether you like that or not, they're committed to him both financially and from every piece of information I can try to glean from people. They're in on Tyler Bass. And so here's the challenging part of that entire conversation. I get it. There's no competition for Tyler Bass, and you're questioning if the Bills should be committed to him. All right. Right now, the NFL has 90-man rosters. A lot of teams do have 2 kickers. It's the middle of August. Fine. Bring in competition. That's fine. But if you're going to replace Tyler Bass, it makes no sense to go from one inconsistent kicker to another inconsistent kicker, right? That doesn't make any sense to me, because there is proof of concept with Tyler Bass being a good kicker. That has happened. There's a reason he got the contract that he did. Secondly, if you cut Tyler Bass and move on, you have dead cap. So you're not going to move on from an inconsistent kicker to another consistent kicker while you're just going to also accumulate dead cap, and especially when the other inconsistent kicker doesn't have any proof of concept. So, I get it. I understand the conversation, but calibrate your expectations, because I don't think the Bills are doing anything with Tyler Bass. If the bottom falls out and he just can't play, well, then you got to do something. But I think you have to let this season play out a little bit and see. And again, every indication that I get is that the Bills are committed to Tyler Bass. I'm nervous about him. You guys know that. I've talked about him for a long time now. Very critical, but I'm trying to get everyone's mind in the right place so that we're not just being frustrated. There's a reason. The Bills they have to be able to clearly upgrade. And I don't think right now with 90-man rosters across the NFL that there's just great options out there that can certainly upgrade Tyler Bass. Let's see. There's proof of him being a good kicker in the NFL. I hope that the best outcome here would be that Tyler Bass goes out and he's the kicker he's supposed to be for the Bills, makes about 90% of his field goals, and we feel good about it. We don't have any confidence right now. I understand that, but let's let this thing play out a little bit. Next one. Oh, the other part of that question was about Brian Daboll and trick plays. I don't know. I don't really miss trick plays. They're fun. They're interesting to me. Like when they work, they're awesome. But boy, when they don't work, they are bad. And Josh Allen's your quarterback. I don't need trick plays. I want 17 to run regular plays because when that happens, good things happen. So I can appreciate some of that. But I don't know. I don't fall in love with trick plays like a lot of people. I don't associate, like, people say, well, there's no creativity. What are you talking about? Like, trick plays is your qualifier for creativity. I don't know. Like, if Josh Allen's my quarterback, I want Josh Allen to throw the ball. I don't need other people to throw the football. I want Josh Allen to throw the football as much as possible. I did see a play where Josh Allen was on the field and didn't throw the football. I can only say so much due to reporting restrictions, but I mean, I did see that, but I don't know. I don't get fired up about trick plays like a lot of people do. They don't move the needle for me. When they work, they're great. I don't know. I want Josh Allen to run all the regular plays. Next one here comes from Rob, who says, in herd mentality this week, can you break down how you do the all-22 review? Do you watch a couple of times and then break it down? Do you go in watching for certain things or focus on certain players? How long does this typically take? Very interested in what the day and the life of an all-22 review looks like. It's a good question, Rob. So the first part of a day in the life of the all-22 review is getting the film. And so I have a film source, and sometimes I get it at 6 a.m., sometimes I get it at 11 a.m., sometimes I get it at 1 p.m. So first is just that guessing game of when I'm going to get the film. Hopefully I want to get it as early as possible. And then from there, the amount of time it takes, I would say on the low end, 6 hours, on the long end, 8 hours of watching it. I watch it. I have an offense file, a defense file, and a special teams file. So I'm able to watch all the offense, all the defense, and all the special teams. In terms of what I'm looking for, the preseason is different than the regular season. During the regular season, I'm looking for certainly execution, right? Execution, but like what did the Bills try to get done? What was their game plan? What did they think they could do to exploit issues on the other team, and was it successful? So I'm focusing a lot more in on that. During the preseason, I'm focusing a lot more in on performance of individual player evaluation. So when I watched the all-22 against the Bears, I wasn't really interested in, okay, what are the Bills running and did it work? I was interested in, how did Keon Coleman look? How did Ray Davis look? How did Sedrick Van Pran Granger, Tylan Grable, Dwayne Carter, Daequan Hardy, Dorian Williams? I had certain players that I was really kind of focused in on. So I watch every single play, but it's not necessarily what were the Bills trying to do. It's, well, how did the players perform that I'm most interested in? And then I share that information with you. During the regular season, I'm always interested in player performance and understanding, what the Bills are trying to run and what skill sets and how they deploy their players to do it. But it's a little bit less evaluation oriented than it is, okay, how did the team perform and why did or did not it work? So it's a little bit different. In terms of how I watch it, I watch each play until I'm done with each play. And so some plays, it could be several times. Sometimes it could, I probably at least a couple times I watch it. I watch it from three angles. One's the sideline angle with all 22. One's a back line where you get like the end zone angle, and then the opposite end zone angle. So I see it from three different angles every single play. So I watch every single play at least 3 times, but I could watch certain looks more than once depending on what speaks to me on that play. So right now I'm definitely interested on specific players. During the regular season, that'll shift a little bit. But I'm also just looking for cool stuff like, hey, that was an awesome route. That was a killer block. That was a great pass rush move. That was great coverage. I always like to see that stuff, but it varies based on the circumstances. And after I watch it, I put all my notes together, record a podcast. So it's a long day. It's definitely the longest of all my days, but it's probably the one I look forward to the most. It's super fun. And then as I'm going through it, I make clips, right? So if something speaks to me in a certain way, I will do a clip where I'll do voiceover commentary. Could be anywhere from 45 seconds to 2 minutes. And then I put that in a reel that I send to everybody who is part of our subtext community. So become part of the subtext community. You can check that out as well. There's a link in today's show notes to join. All right, folks, that is going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Really appreciate you being here. Again, I don't have the corresponding moves yet, but we'll certainly update everyone on that once we have them for the roster transactions we talked about in segment 1. Plenty of more Bills conversation coming this week. The Bills have joint practices with the Steelers, a preseason game against the Steelers on Saturday. So much to do. Be sure to make sure that you are subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.